Welcome everybody to Accelerating Geothermal Energy, Overcoming Challenging and Seizing Opportunities. Are you excited? Yeah. Wow, that was not that good of an answer. Let me try again. I mean, this is Energy Disruptors, right? Are you excited? Yeah. Okay, let's hit it.
The future is now, not backing down, 'cause the future is now.
Yeah, the future is now, but global warming is also here, and it is accelerating at record speed, causing everything from heat waves, droughts, wildfires, you name it. We need to start fighting climate change. It is time, and at COP28, we decided that the world needs to triple the renewable energy capacity by 2030. Now, the exponential growth of solar and wind is crucial, but it also has and presents some challenges. Grid instability, a lack of long-term storage, dependence on imported critical materials, and here we have a missing piece. I say this is geothermal, the Earth's hidden power, the missing piece in the renewable puzzle, and that is what we are here to talk about today. Geothermal energy is clean baseload power and heat. It's always on, 24/7, and it stabilizes the grid and complements solar and wind. The global potential today in the world is much larger than what we have actually here today. We're looking at numbers where we could increase both when it comes to power and heating. And this is what we are going to talk about today, how we will solve this puzzle. To do this, I have brought with me some esteemed colleagues from the industry of geothermal. Let me present up on stage the panelists from today. It is Ann Robertson-Tait, President GeothermEx, John Redfern, President and CEO of Eavor, and Alexander Helling, CEO Baseload Capital. Give them a big hand and a warm applause. Ah, come on now! There you go. There you go. You know, no pun intended, but we need to heat this joint up. Ah. Are you ready for that?
We need more puns like that.
Yeah, we need more puns. Colleagues from the industry, I was recently at the Breakthrough Energy Ventures Summit in London, and Eric Toon there said, to end the energy crisis, we must innovate. It will take hard work and time, but optimism is the key. The solution lies in electricity and we need all technologies, geothermal, hydro, nuclear, to succeed. But he also said that geothermal was a key part of the puzzle. And this is what I would like to discuss with you today. But before I let you speak, I want to see a little bit about the knowledge base from the real panel we have here, or our distinguished guests listening. Can I ask you, guys, how many of you knew about geothermal? Hand up. Okay, so now we know what level we are at. How about, have you never heard about geothermal before, and this is something new and exciting to you? No hands. Okay, that's exciting.
No true confessions.
No true confessions.
Okay.
Well, that's exciting.
Well,
But if
Fantastic.
I start you off here, guys, and just discuss the first question I have here, where is geothermal right here and now, according to you? If you start to Alex.
well, first I must say that I'm impressed with all of you that know geothermal. You know, I'm from Sweden, and if I would ask, 10 people on the street, I'm betting you 9 would not know about geothermal at all, even though, 40% of all the households in Sweden are heated by geothermal heat. So, I'm very impressed with this audience. I'm looking forward to having this discussion.
What was more remarkable is Peter Tsakian himself mentioned the word geothermal, which has taken a few years if Peter's in the house, but
We had Obama saying geothermal a lot, and we hear our friend Kamala doing the same.
Yeah.
which is very exciting.
So there is something happening within the geothermal industry.
I would say there is, and for GeothermEx, we're a company that's been operating in the subsurface side of geothermal for 51 years, and it's like insane. We can't keep up with the work, and this is really good to hear. So we're hiring more people, and we're doing more work and getting more online.
Okay, let's go back to the audience here and listen. I would like to know how many of you have heard about the potential of geothermal energy before today, about the grand potential. If you have a yes, please raise your hand. And if you have a no, please raise your hand now.
Other hand.
Here we go. Okay, good. So if I go back to you again, Alex, what is the actual potential right now?
I would say it's huge. And I think, but what many people think or miss is that they think about electricity. When you have to think about the full ecosystem, including heating, cooling, and mineral extraction. If you include that and look at the geothermal ecosystem, it's, you have a massive potential.
Can you give me some numbers?
Well, we at the Breakthrough Energy Conference, Eric Thun also said that we need to go from the existing 8,000 gigawatts of installed electric capacity up to 24,000 by 2050. Of these 24,000, 10% needs to be a clean baseload power. And he said that the only three things that can actually lead to this is nuclear, hydro, and geothermal. So,
And two of those can't expand,
exactly.
which leaves.
Geothermal.
Oh, good. Good thing we figured that out.
Yeah. So we're talking 2,400 gigawatts of clean renewable baseload power.
So there was recently a release of a report from the US Department of Energy. It's called Pathways to Commercial Liftoff with the next generation of geothermal power. And they are actually stating that in US, conventional geothermal power has the potential of 40 gigawatts. Now we're talking only US. And with only 3.7 gigawatts currently produced, and if we would think about next generation geothermal, it would increase to 5,000 gigawatts, meaning 5.5 terawatts. That's enough to power US for thousands of years. Mm-hmm. Now, we're talking about conventional and next generation. John, why don't you give us a one-on-one? What's the difference?
I'm glad I still classify as next generation. It's reassuring at my age. But no, the whole thing with it is when we talk about potential, we keep thinking of it as a resource, whereas we think, or at Eavor anyways, that it's unlimited because there's so much heat. The question is how quickly can we scale up and drill it and train people and do everything else? And the really good thing for geothermal is all those skill sets, most of those assets, and most of the knowledge that is needed to tap into that, it exists in the oil industry already. And so that's the limiting factor, training people, getting people up, but we've got a huge head start because we have this springboard of the oil and gas industry. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, but I'm thinking again, let's turn to the audience again. Do you know the difference between conventional and next generation? Hand up. Much less people actually raise their hand here, and we're still talking about complete difference. What would you say, Ann? What's the difference?
So the difference is conventional geothermal has everything you need right in one place. You have heat, high temperatures, you've got good fractured rock that's permeable, you can drill into it, and you can take that fluid out and make electricity with it or heat with it or whatever you want to do. You can actually make cooling with it too, as they do in Abu Dhabi. But the next generation resources are not relying on nature for their success. They're relying more on an engineering strategy. And John's company, Eavor, does closed loop systems that just rely on conductive heat transfer. You drill deep into the earth and you collect that heat. It's like a very fancy borehole heat exchanger, if you know what that is, or something like a radiator in reverse, because you're attracting the heat into the system rather than radiating it out of your car engine. But of course you all have, EVs by now. But the other next-gen technology is EGS. The closed-loop solution is referred to as Advanced Geothermal Systems, and EGS stands for Enhanced Geothermal Systems, so we have to have our acronyms, 3 letters.
We need better marketing, don't we?
We do. And EGS takes a different approach. It fractures rock to increase the permeability, to enhance the permeability. And that's the second next-gen technology that is taking off quite a bit in the US. We have a lot of investment in it. There's even, GeothermEx does a lot of due diligence work, and so we're sort of flooded with due diligence on EGS right now. So that's good to hear. And these systems, while created through fracturing techniques that were made possible in shale, we're seeing really great reductions in drilling times, and the rocks are being successfully fractured. What we don't know is the long-term sustainability yet, but we're getting some track record on that.
So if I turn to you now, John, on this topic, if you look at like what's called the next generation then, AGS, EGS, closed loop, on a scale of 1 to 10, how far along are they right now?
Well, that's a good question. I think what is happening right now is a lot of experimentation. We could call this the Precambrian explosion stage, where there's a lot of innovation, people like Sage, like Fervo, like ourselves, like Baseload, all trying different things. And a lot of we're feeding off each other, exchanging ideas, and some of the simplest stuff is just, better drilling. That helps all the different variants of it. Drilling beyond where oil and gas went, drilling into hotter, deeper formations. So that's all coming along. But where is it on a TRL?
So on a scale of 1 to 10?
Wait, on a TRL thing, I think we got some that are 1 and some that are 9. They're commercial. And
Okay, so it actually differs very much from 1 to 9.
yeah, there's some different technologies involved. The traditional stuff is obviously at a 9 already. I think that a lot of the EGS is getting very close. We've got our first commercial project under development in Germany, and we're thinking that the second one after that is already commercial and that it can become self-funding. So I think we all got elements of that 9, but we've got other projects, that are focused on geothermal absolutely everywhere, or anywhere, I should say, not just in the hot spots, not just into high-priced environments, but everywhere. And those things are at a much lower level. A public example would be Quays, which is a very audacious program, but it's a low TRL.
Yeah, and I would say that one might be in the 2-3 range at present, and maybe a little bit higher would be supercritical fluids, which give you a 10x productivity factor on conventional geothermal, and super hot rocks at depth. I don't know what super hot rock really means. It hasn't been quantified in a sensible way, in my opinion, but trying to extract heat from the earth. And a guy named Eli Dorado years ago sort of made this pronouncement that the earth has more heat than we could ever use in a zillion years, basically. Extracting it is the problem. And so these technologies that we're describing here, the next generation technologies, don't rely on the natural systems. They create them in one way or another.
But I think we talked earlier, and super hot rock really is more of a destination rather than a technology.
Yep.
It's like saying you got gas-powered cars, electric-powered cars, and fast cars. Well, we all want fast cars, and it's the same thing sort of here.
Especially Kristina.
We all love fast cars. Is it clearer? Do you now know what the conventional versus next generation is? Hand up. Okay, I think we clarified, but there are still some hands out there that are not raised, so I'm going to come back to this one. But I will continue with the next question first. So I would like again to get some hands raised on the question of how do you believe geothermal energy can significantly address the global energy crisis? Yes, if you have a belief in that. I was thinking that all of the hands up here would be raised.
Oh.
Yeah? And
maybe.
No, there are no clear doubters, but there are a couple of brave people out there. I love that.
Disruptive naysayers. This is good.
Yeah, we do. So let's stay here a little bit and discuss why geothermal energy. And I would like to go to you, Alex. How do you think that geothermal energy can complement solar and wind in the future?
Well, if you look at the scale, in certain parts, like I said, in Sweden, it's already at scale with geothermal ground source heat pumps. that 40% is already installed. If we look at the electricity part, we are a super small industry. We only have 16.7 gigawatts installed. We need to scale up massively. And solar and wind is a very good complement to what we do. We can stabilize the grid.
In what way?
We can stabilize the grid, and if you can also integrate them. If you take a geothermal power plant combined with solar, for example, in peak hours of the day, we have a decline in power production because of the cooling tower, and then the solar can complement that. So it's a perfect curve to do combined geothermal and solar projects.
Yeah, we do that quite a lot in Nevada, where water rights are pretty scarce, and so you don't have cooling water, so they air cool. But the profile stays pretty nicely steady in the summer because you've got solar PV aside the geothermal plant. So they do work together pretty nicely already.
Does it work together with something else? I'm going to go back to you again, Alex. Can you tell us a bit more about the ecosystem around it?
No, so you can do a lot. You also have mineral extraction, for example, which is a very hot topic right now to mainly extract lithium, but there are a lot of other ones. We have a collaboration in New Zealand with a company called EO40 that extracts silica that are being used for zero carbon cement, for example. So you can use this ecosystem in a lot of different ways. And you can also produce power, then after you produce the power, you use the waste heat to produce heating or cooling, for example. So, it's a very nice resource to work with.
Let's not take anything for granted. We're talking often about clean, firm capacity. What do we mean with this, Ann?
We mean energy that can be provided day and night at a steady rate. So the Geysers is a famous geothermal field in Northern California, and at its peak, it generated 2 gigawatts of clean electricity, clean, firm electricity in the 1980s. So this is not something new, but there aren't that many resources that are that huge and wonderful.
Right. Well, actually, we've been looking for 70 years and haven't found a second.
Yeah, that's pretty true. There's some close analogs in Indonesia, but not the same. This is a dry steam field. The steam goes right into the turbine from the field.
You also mentioned a little bit earlier about it's not only about heating or power, it's also about cooling. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of action around data centers right now. They do try to use clean technologies for supplying their data centers. They have a general mandate, I would say, in many cases. And so geothermal is being looked at very closely for this right now. But data centers also need cooling, and you can use the waste heat to supply absorption chillers, which is what they're doing in the Masdar Green City in Abu Dhabi, as I mentioned before. This is an operating project that's being expanded as we speak, tapping into 2 about 2,400-meter wells, 90 degrees C, providing a really nice cooling system for that city. So cooling in data centers is also very important, so you can use it in that same way for those. So it's just one of the many uses, but I think it's a worthwhile thing to think about, what I call coolth from heat. Why not? We have a lot of use cases for geothermal.
So clean, firm capacity, it is everywhere. We have it for heating, cooling, and supporting and it's also supporting an ecosystem.
Yep.
So,
well said.
Why isn't it everywhere already?
Well,
I'll let you dwell on that, and I will turn to the audience.
Okay.
And I will ask you now to discuss, and I would like you to turn to your neighbor. Why do you think geothermal energy is not everywhere already? Please turn to your neighbor.
Oh, mutter, mutter, mutter. Let's get some answers from you. Yeah, that'd be cool.
And if I can get a microphone going.
Wow, that's good. That's a good question.
I like this.
It's a nice kind of a buzz, and soon enough, we are going to get a microphone out there. I'm going to get answers from 2 people.
Oh, 2 only. That's
2
not
or
fair.
3. We'll see how much we have time to. Okay, let's hear from you because you are sitting with a lot of knowledge and perspective. Who wants to be the first to answer this question?
Say the question.
Hand up.
Say the question again.
So the question was, why isn't it already everywhere? Your perspective on it. Hands up, who wants to share? There you go. Here you come. It's a microphone on the way.
So existing systems and infrastructure are already in place that need to be adapted for geothermal.
Interesting. Can we answer that?
Sorry, what was that?
He was saying that the infrastructure has to be available for supplying more geothermal to the grid, right?
And it's not there today.
Well,
Is it true?
I wouldn't say so.
It depends where you are. Grids get congested in some places, particularly in places like Southern California with lots of solar, but they overbuild sometimes capacity.
Right. But that applies to every energy source.
It does, but
So there is, but it applies to any, there is a problem, but it applies to any energy source there is out there already. Alex, you said something.
No, I would just say we have that problem in Japan where we're developing projects and the grid is completely packed. It's almost impossible to supply power to the grid.
I think
So I would add that, say for a home looking to switch to geothermal for heating or cooling, or even at a city scale where you're looking at district heating and cooling,
exactly.
the infrastructure is not there today to accommodate that.
But the
Thank you,
infrastructure is growing, and what you're doing is offsetting the need for electricity when you decarbonize your home with geothermal heat and cooling. So ground source heat pumps can do both in the right climate. So yeah, I take your point, but you know maybe there's another reason from somebody.
Let's see if we have another reason what you think. Over here is, we have two here. So
Fight it out.
the lady over here,
no, outsource.
and we have the gentleman in the, there you go. Your thoughts?
Oh, sorry. I think there's three myths, and I think you've already.
Can you get closer?
I think there's three myths, and I think you've already indicated and addressed one, but that geothermal is a new technology. Number two, that geothermal is only feasible in hot places with volcanoes and earthquakes. And the third, that geothermal isn't viable due to technical and engineering reasons.
Oh, interesting ones.
I would argue with every single one of those.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
geothermal isn't new. I'm the old new energy, okay? You know, geothermal is the old new energy. It's been around for, you know, millennia. And the technology that we are seeing expand today is really growing the pie, let's say, for geothermal. So thank you for that.
It's growing the pie, but traditionally the problem was it just wasn't scalable. So you didn't get the big oil companies who are the natural people to pursue this to be interested. And it's only with these next-gen products where you're removing some of the geological constraints that all of a sudden is scalable, and all of a sudden we have all this excitement Ann's talking about.
And that's why you see next gen sort of bubbling up, you know, pretty quickly now. And
Also, speaking on that note, I would like you, Alex, to share a little bit about the thinking about financing, because that has actually been a challenge before. So where are we with it now?
No, but just to answer your question also, I think one problem for geothermal not scaling is that the risk profile is very heavy, front-loaded. So it's very expensive to drill these wells. It's, you know, you have a lot of risk in, you know, drilling a single exploration well or a production well, and you can end up with the $10 million, you know, very hot hole in the ground. So that risk profile has been, you know, one major reason, and how you can mitigate that by building portfolios, for example. And when it comes to financing, like if you have a high risk in the beginning, but you have a utility return in the end, that risk profile usually doesn't fit most investors, right? So we in the industry need to figure out, you know, how can we take down that risk? How do we find the investors that understand that risk? Because if you have investors that can calculate and, you know, understand that risk profile, they can also contribute. If you have investors that don't understand that, they're going to be, they're not going to be very happy, right? So we need to, you know, show and work with the risk profile of these projects, and there are many ways to de-risk them. And we also have to find the investors and educate them on how the risk profile of these projects look like.
But there was a lot of skepticism at the start. I think when we all started this most recent trend upward, that it wasn't scalable in the past, and it's taken a lot of convincing to get people comfortable with that.
We're
And
doing a good work here, convincing here.
And that's why I think oil and gas is back in the game,
Yeah.
because they see that in next gen.
Are they back in the game? How do we see that?
A few,
Yeah?
we see.
They're starting toe in the water. Toe in the water.
John, you are going to the panel right after this,
Yeah.
sitting and talking with Shell and
Shell and Exxon, and Exxon hasn't done anything in geothermal. Shell's been, actually, speaking of that, spent the first 2 years of our existence at Eavor trying to convince Shell that there was a next generation geothermal coming along, and we failed. So we moved on to other
Well,
people who are more.
The profitability also is a big problem, and I think that's the big elephant in the room here. Oil and
But
gas.
we actually saw recently that we have seen there are new ROI reports showing that,
Yep.
yes, it takes some time. It takes between up to 5 years in thermal and up to 7 years in power. But the
To break
return
even.
over investment after that, can you comment on that?
Well, okay, I thought I was going to ask you. No,
Well, we do find when
I'll
we
let you
do
first.
due diligence that investors are looking for a return no longer than 10 years. They want to know they're breaking even within 10 years, and ideally about 5. But
But
somewhere in between seems to be, acceptable.
needn't be a problem, because especially with some of the new stuff, once it's built, it's very predictable. It wasn't always that way. Traditional geothermal could, you get cold water breakthrough or something halfway through.
Yep.
But now, with our stuff, it's highly capital intensive at the start, but once it's running, you know exactly you're going to get for the next 20 years, which means you can finance it. So you can bifurcate the capital stack, you get some risk money come in, build the project, but then you can immediately flip it to an infrastructure fund, and away you go. And everyone's happy.
And I think
And
Also,
making
if I
it
may
an
comment, also in this report, it
infrastructure
shows that the rumor about geothermal is that it's more expensive than solar and wind, and the return of investment is longer. But this report actually shows that that's not the case. Alex, would you care to comment on that?
Yeah, I just want to comment on what John said also. I think, what many misses out in the geothermal sector is that you have different pockets of capital that are suitable for the different phases of the project. So how do you combine and work with equity and debt throughout the project portfolio? And I think that's super important to understand what money fits where in when you're developing a geothermal project or a technology for that sense.
Right.
When it comes to, is it profitable? Can we produce it cheap? Yes. Like on Iceland, you get paid $35 per megawatt hour, so you have to be that. So it's definitely possible. Then you can say that Iceland, you don't need to drill that deep. Definitely, that's the way. But if you look in Japan, for example, you get paid almost $300 per megawatt hour, and the return rates are now the same, which means that there's a huge possibility to take the learnings and the knowledge that we have here in North America, for example, or on Iceland, transfer that into extremely high profitable markets that have the resource but don't have the supply chain. So, by collaborating and, taking the knowledge already that exists, we can make it very profitable, I would say.
Well, you got to recreate that entire value chain.
Yeah.
The thing I'd say on us being more expensive is I say, we're worth it.
We're worth it.
Yes, and that
Because we bring a lot of other attributes.
That brings me to what I call the false mathematics of fossil fuels. Look, we all use them, and we have to do something about that. But geothermal is low to no emissions, and yet fossil fuels continue to pollute our air. Something that is never accounted for in the cost of producing energy. And I think, we're here to disrupt, so I would ask all of you to promote this idea that the externalities aren't just a word. They're screwing up our atmosphere big time. So this is my position.
But like I
on
say,
that.
I'd like to say we're
Thank you.
worth it compared to wind and solar as well. We complement them nicely,
Yes?
but we're going to be more per naked kilowatt hour than them. But still worth building.
Good, thank you very much. Last comment from the gentleman over there. No, you already got your question answered. Thank you very much. Then I'm done discussing the difficulties. We have about 10 more minutes to convince these people in the room here to make sure that they really feel that geothermal can actually be the thing. So I'm going back to the audience again, and let me see your hands up here. My question to you is, do you believe, after listening to these very experienced speakers up here, panelists, do you believe geothermal energy can scale rapidly over the next 10 years? Hands up if you believe it. And hands up if you don't believe it. There are not too many doubters. There were some people who don't want to say there is. What do we need to do in order to scale fast enough?
We need to do every bit of conventional we can, number one. We need to push EGS to the limit and do it in more places. Maybe not in Europe, because they don't like fracturing rock, but wherever we can. And there is definitely, I have actually come out and said that by 2030, we should have another 0 on those installed capacity numbers. You know, not 16, but 160. So I think it can be done.
I think we can make it.
Put our minds to
I
it.
think we can make it if we have the right models, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
EGS, it's being proven. There'll be a whole bunch of people pile into that because it's in the public domain.
Yep.
For us, it's a little different. We've got something of a proprietary system, but we're not going to stand in the way of that rapidly growing. We're going to license it to whoever wants it, including Ann. But,
There's been sayings that geothermal doesn't have a technological problem, they have a policy problem. Would anyone care to comment on that?
There's a policy problem associated with the time frame for geothermal that is unfortunate. And it's similar in many, many countries. It's, you know, you could say the same for Indonesia as you could say for the United States. There's a well-meaning intention to do things right and safely, you know, environmentally correctly, and that's all important. But, you know, we have an urgency here that we cannot sort of ignore. And so I'm proud to say that there's been some legislation passed around this topic in the United States. Whether Indonesia can do that too, there's only about 17 agencies you have to go to for permitting there. We're definitely streamlining it in the US. And of course, we're getting some incentives in the form of tax credits for geothermal projects of every kind.
Yeah, and on your question, Kristina, about does it take to scale, I usually say execution, execution, execution. We need to go out, build projects. We need to show that it's profitable. We need to show that we actually can do it. Now, I'd like to add policy as well, because when we execute, if we get the right policies in place, we can shave off years. And a geothermal project, you know, typically takes between 5 to 10 years. So if we can shave off years of that, thanks to policy, that will help us to execute. And then we need a lot more capital in this industry because it is capital intense.
It also depends on your team. So, for example, there's only one integrated geothermal developer, and that's Ormat. And they build their own power plants, and they do the exploration, and they do the drilling, and they do the testing. We work with them sometimes. And they do have a pretty fast-track approach because they're doing modular units that, you know, they know inside and out, and they have a construction crew that does this for them routinely. So they've got kind of a pattern running. So it is getting a little bit shorter on the execution as well.
well, same with ourselves. I mean, in our current commercial implementation, we ordered the power plant way before we did any of the drilling. I know that you may think that's rash, but but we could do that because we knew what was coming out because of the
Yes,
nature
the
of
uncertainty wasn't the same
Yeah,
as
exactly.
yeah, and so
that, and
we would definitely like to see a few successful wells before we did a conventional project like
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
So we're fixing the technology, or actually we already have technology, but we're also introducing new technology. Policy is on the way, investments are coming, which is good. Awareness is building, more and more people, we saw that in this room, right? More and more
Yeah,
people
it
know
really
what
surprised
geothermal
me.
is.
Yeah.
which is great. And we're moving to an end a little bit, and I'm going to ask the question to the audience soon again. But before that, I would like to prepare you guys, because I usually ask for some extra help. So Ann, you're going to summarize who?
Alex.
And Alex, who are you going to summarize?
John.
And John, who are you going to summarize? Just good. So in order for you to get like the sweet spots of what everybody says, so get your notebook out there so that you can get all those quotes, those nice stuff, right? But before I let them go and do the summarizing, I would like to ask you guys in this room now, are you feeling more optimistic about geothermal energy after today's session? Yes, if you feel like that? Well, that's good. And no, if you don't feel more optimistic. Oh, there are a couple. I thank you for your bravery. That's good. We need to continue the conversation, definitely. And I would like to urge you to do so. We will still be here around to answer all your questions about geothermal and what we can do more or less or differently. I think that the communication is extremely important in that way as well, so that we have that awareness building. But now, let's move forward. Why don't you start, Ann?
Okay. So Alexander Hellings is not only a really intelligent human being and fun, and he's a drummer and plays in a band.
Did you quote that down?
All of this is very important, clearly.
I didn't ask for I don't know what musical instrument. We didn't cover that.
But I think something you said really resonated with me today, and that's the word infrastructure, and you mentioned it too. I think that geothermal needs to be considered an infrastructure play. And that would also advance it, and grow it more. And I don't know what you think about that, but I just, it really resonated with me because, in Peter Tertzairian's speech today, he mentioned the middle of the barbell, and I'm wondering, is that the infrastructure we need to really grow geothermal? So that came into my mind.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much, Ann. I'm going to continue with you, John.
On the barbell, I actually think that what we do is we eliminate a lot of the need for the stuff in the middle because we're a self-contained solution. It's dispatchable. It's, doesn't need any other link to the grid. You can put it next to a data center. It really makes, and it's resilient. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to have tons of transmission lines and a whole bunch of other stuff. But back to Ann.
Yes.
Ann, as she mentioned earlier, has been here
since the Cretaceous period.
So I wasn't going to say that, but she wants to be have a little bit more of a sassy image, and she's made it clear she's dabbling in EGS, and heaven forbid might even do AGS. So we're happy to have you aboard, hopefully. But
no, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have this diversity among us. I think it's really important.
Alex, what about you? If you summarize John and his best words today.
Well, I think if I use my own words, then I think John and Eavor is leading the innovation when it comes to closed-loop system globally. Like building subsurface heat exchanger can disrupt the whole geothermal energy system. And not only electricity, but also in heating especially. And I'm really excited what you guys are doing, and I think that it takes a lot of resilience and being innovative in order to develop this, and I think that you guys are doing a great job in showing what is possible in creating next generation geothermal.
I can't object.
Thank you, esteemed colleagues for the help we have here. If I would summarize this, and what I want you to remember are a couple of things. So to solve this energy crisis, we need all technologies working together. And geothermal is a part of the renewables that can actually be the baseline that is now needed. And we need to innovate together with the other systems, but definitely not to be disregarded as what we are today. There already is a potential. The potential can be even grander if it is. So if I would end with a couple of words, I would actually say that the Earth has power. It's just time to switch it on. Thank you for today, ladies and gentlemen. Please come up with us and ask. And good job. There you go.